So, welcome everybody. My name is Matt Taylor, and I'm excited about tonight's topic, not just because we came up with a name for our blog called Wave It Fair, like Carlton Fisk in the 1975 World Series, which next year, by the way, will be the 50th anniversary of that. Hard to believe. Um, and, tonight we're going to talk about interleague play. This isn't something I've had a lot of discussions about, so I'm interested in hearing about it.
Excellent. My name's Dave Greco, and I'm stoked. I appreciate Mr. Taylor coming up with Wave and Fair. I think that's an appropriate name for our podcast. And um, I'm looking forward to this conversation about interleague play, especially since the World Series is taking a sweet time to get here, but it's coming up. Um, and I think that this is something that's directly affected by interleague play.
Absolutely. And I'm Quinn Rolo. Really psyched to I've decided on the pod name, Waving It Fair. And I'm also intrigued to hear what you two gents have to say about interleague play. Um, I figure as I was thinking about it on this All Hallows Eve of the game one of the World Series, I was thinking about how my stance on interleague play feels very much in keeping with uh, how I've kind of grown in my life as the middle child of my family. They say middle children tend to be the kind of like the mediators, kind of the peacekeepers, and I fancy myself to have relatively moderate viewpoints on a lot of things. I kind of maybe get a little wacky on a few topics, but generally speaking, I try to stay kind of moderate on things. Um, and on the topic of interleague play, I think I think back to when I was really kind of getting more and more into baseball, as I mentioned on prior pods. Uh, my dad really kind of like really handing down his love for the sport, his love for Red Sox to me, and me kind of getting really into it as I was growing older. Like I really remember basically like age 7 or 8, well into my college years, just like that really being the age, like loving like watching baseball, going to Fenway with my dad, watching it on the couch next to him, and just kind of getting into it and like playing in fantasy leagues with my friends as I was getting older and all that great stuff. And I remember when interleague play was introduced in 1997, thinking like, oh, you know, this is this is cool. Like I don't remember like I've heard of these teams, and I might catch a stray highlight on like Sports Center back in the day, but I wasn't seeing these teams very much. And so it just like it had this really cool novelty to it. Um, and I think one of the cooler elements to it that I hadn't even considered until I actually saw some games at the time was that we would lose the DH when we were playing in National League parks. And, because when I was getting into baseball at that age, and, you know, you would only see the leagues play against each other in the All-Star game or the World Series. And so the All-Star game was really fun and cool, but the World Series kind of didn't have much investment in that in my heyday of growing up with watching the Sox, because for a huge chunk of my youth, the Sox they kind of sputtered. They were kind of good. They'd maybe get into the playoffs, but they never made it to the World Series. At least in my lifetime, in my you know lifetime where I was aware of baseball, until 2004. When I was already 21 years old. So, uh, um, so interleague play, when that got introduced, it really did have this fresh novelty to it that I really appreciated. The way the gameplay shifted when you went into the National League, I remember feeling uh, just really intrigued by it. I have more. I have more thoughts on the topic, but before I just continue to bloviate even more on the topic, I wanted to kind of lead off with some of my positive viewpoints and recollections of it. I'm curious to hear though what Mr. Greco has to say
He's chomping
about
at the bit. I
interleague
can see
play.
it.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll keep it positive at the start.
Okay.
I think that interleague play in introducing the National League game and a strategy that came from not having a DH and how the game was managed and how important certain players were coming off the bench. And um, also, I think that um, the idea of it is fantastic because it does open up the game, you would think, to new eyeballs, right? It's a unique thing. It's something that didn't happen. Um, now, the DH is universal. So a lot of what I thought was positive about it is gone. Right. So I'm gonna shut up now because I'm gonna get into the negative side. And and
That didn't
and
take very long.
I certainly want to hear Taylor's take on it because I think, you know, as much as we're peers, I also think that Taylor has a really unique vantage point because of his life experiences watching the game. I mean, you've been able to see a lot more than we have, not just um, timeline wise, but also geographically from where you lived and everything. So, um, I want you to jump in before I turn this into a.
So for me, um, it's really about just about seeing things in the game that I never saw before. So I know what a double switch is, but I couldn't explain it to somebody. Like it's so hard to explain to somebody. Like, you bring in a pitcher, they go into this part of the order, they swap with this guy. This guy moves, goes out of the game. He takes that spot in the order, and like nobody understands it. I understand it, but I can't explain it. So, but it was an interesting strategy that managers in the National League had. If you want the, like, I used to see like stars and players that I didn't see, like Piazza. Um, I remember seeing Kurt Schilling when he was with the Phillies for the first time. When I like Kurt Schilling, uh, and that was a big part of it for me. I would say the biggest thing is I like the National League ballparks better. I just think they're better ballparks. When I look at Philadelphia, particularly Pittsburgh, um, Philadelphia, I like, Citi Field better than Yankee Stadium. What are the other ones I like? San Francisco. I haven't been to Petco, but I want to see Petco. I want to see St. Louis. I just like and Coors Field is a big one too.
Those parks do seem to just have more character.
Yeah.
The current Yankee Stadium just feels like the Death Star. Just feels like a faceless, emotionless blob
Yep.
of like no energy anymore. Like not even like the old Yankee Stadium. The old Yankee Stadium still had, a little pizzazz, like a little energy to it.
Yeah.
Uh, the whole chanting of the names, of the whole lineup, and like you can just hear it better. Like it came through with the TV. I mean, maybe it's different if you're actually there, but when it comes through on TV, New Yankee Stadium just freaking blows,
Yeah.
which is going to be kind of a bummer in the World Series.
Yeah.
You know what? What I love about this is that no matter what we talk about, even if we don't say that you're all Red Sox fans, it fucking comes shining through, especially with Mr. Rolo, without like any sort of provocation. Oh, wait, Yankee Stadium? I'm gonna take a big shit on it. Wait, watch this. Right?
Act like you're all above it. You don't like
I
the
love
Yankees
it.
either. They've been terrorizing the Rays.
I love it. Love it. I love it. I love it. What else, Taylor? What else about Interleague that you love?
That's yeah. I would go see the Red Sox play these National League teams, and it was a big um, draw for me because I love seeing the National League cities. I think places I've never been to St. Louis. That's the next place I want to go.
Mm.
But I think it's interesting to see the fan bases in the National League and what they know because it was it's not anymore, but at the time it was a different game. So I like seeing fans that knew the game other than like the American League way of doing things. That was the main thing.
Right. Well, Rollo, you got anything to add positive?
always hear that the St. Louis fans are among the friendliest fans in all of the
Yeah.
like sports crowd, like the friendliest that still know what they're watching, that are still like invested and are like informed fans. Like, because
Yeah.
I think there's certain, like I mean, I'm convinced that anyone in Florida just doesn't know what's going on. They just have other things to focus on, or they're maybe too old.
There's no
You
interest
know,
in their teams down there.
right, and like it just feels very kind of like, oh, yeah, this is something to do, I guess, as opposed to like being brilliant. Um, but St. Louis, I just get the sense that they're like a nice folk, but that they know, but that they're really invested in their teams, particularly the Cardinals.
All right.
And I also enjoyed that, the Red Sox thumped them last
Me too.
series wins.
Me too.
Still the second winningest franchise in all sports. You get some catching up to do. My team ain't gonna do anything. They're done. They're done adding to their list. Now, all right. Here we go. 1997, interleague play introduced. No internet, not really the national sports media that we've come to know now. Right? Interleague play, fantastic idea to grow the game. You're coming off of a strike. You're coming off of, trying to save the game. Wonderful idea to spark some more interest in seeing some teams you've never seen before. Right? Certainly, I think it served a purpose in that atmosphere. Now, I think it sucks. And what one of the reasons, and I'm in this is not by any stretch of the imagination, my main reason, because it's not. But you think about what's happening tomorrow. First game of the World Series. Okay. If I told you that one of the most historic franchises in all of sports took their bag, left town, kept the name, not only left town, left one of the biggest sports towns in the world to go to another town and pull up shop there, and hasn't been that successful aside from COVID and one other year in 1988 I don't want to talk about very much, but
And
aside from that, now that team is actually facing the face, for lack of a term, MLB without interleague play and the curiosity of what that rivalry could be without interleague play, and the fact that, wow, a National League team finally, after what's it been, 70 years, is going to come back and face a New York rival who used to battle it out back in the day in the history of the game. How this World Series would have a different tone. It wouldn't just be, fucking the Yankees who are always there, and the Dodgers who bought their championship.
Mhm.
And Mookie Betts is coming back. Oh, great. All right. It would be different. It would be historic. Right now, it's just two teams that you expect to win fighting each other. This would have been a historic championship because one of the things that happens with interleague play is the stories get diluted, right? And they get diluted because of familiarity. One of the things that's great about interleague play is that you get to see the National League game. Well, it doesn't become special anymore,
Mhm.
right? We can talk about the 4 times that they already faced each other during the season. What happened during that? Right, right. How cool was it when there was the unknown, right? You didn't know who the villain was at the end of the movie, right? You didn't know what to expect. You didn't know how good Kurt Schilling was, right? Or you were learning. You heard about Daryl Strawberry, but you never get to see him play. Wow, look at his swing in the series. Look at how man, I heard about him. He's great, right?
You'd never believe that Kirk Gibson could hit a dinger on one leg.
Dude, seriously, right? And Tommy Lasorda,
Mm,
legendary manager. I saw him on This Week in Baseball,
mm.
right?
Yep.
I heard about it, but now I get to watch it. As much as that sucked for me, it was fantastic. What a damn story, right? That's gone. And not only has it diluted what the National League and the American League rivalry is, it's diluted our own damn rivalries. Because you know what? When the Yankees and the Red Sox had to face each other half the season, and their rivalries against obviously Tampa Bay wasn't around in 97, but Tampa Bay. Oh, actually, no, they were, right?
I think they introduced like wasn't it like 95, 96, 97?
Yeah,
It was
yeah, no,
around
I
that
think they
time,
were.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Baltimore, Toronto, those rivalries that you'd have to face them pretty much half the season, and their relationship with you and your division was so much more important than whether or not you beat the Colorado Rockies,
Mm.
right? That has diluted the rivalries, the historic rivalries in the game. It has. Because you know what? You can lose to the Yankees 7 times, but beat the shit out of the NL West.
Mm.
You can drag Arizona through the mud and San Francisco and Colorado and whoever the hell you want, and it's not going to mean as much that the Yankees beat you or that you beat the Yankees because you have those diluted games, and that's what I hate about those movie play.
I could see that. Um, I don't have that reaction to it, but I can see it. Um, so when I first started watching baseball, the Yankees and Dodgers played in the World Series 3 times in 5 years. Um, with 77, 78, 81. And I think at the time, it was such a good rivalry, not just because it was LA and New York, but those teams were big on personality, like Reggie Jackson, Lou Piniella, Munson,
Mm-hmm.
Bucky Dent, and then like they had those series had like those players that I talked about, um, the fringe players that had these huge hits. They had this guy named Brian Doyle who had a huge series, and Bucky Dent actually won the World Series MVP in '78. Nobody ever talks about that. All they ever talk
Right,
about is
right. It's always like, where did this guy come from?
he was an all. He
Yeah.
wasn't a great power hitter, but you know, and then they had this showdown between Bob Welch and Reggie Jackson during the series, and so that it turned out to be a great rivalry, and because of the history of Brooklyn being in Brooklyn and playing the Subway Series there. But it's interesting, there's no question rivalries have diluted. For me, I can't explain. I just think like the Red Sox and Yankees rivalry has been diluted because um, the Red Sox turned into a crappy product. Um,
Trying to emulate the Rays and the A's.
yeah, they've just turned into a bad product. And I think
Yeah.
even in 2018, when we played them in the first round, it wasn't the same.
All right, let me just ask you this real quick. I just want to interject because my first baseball game I ever went to was a Red Sox and Yankees game.
Mhm.
And it was like mid 80s. I was a baby. And I remember I actually fell asleep in my father's lap and went into extra innings. And I will tell you what, as a child, I knew that there was fire there. But when I look back, the Yankees were trash then.
Yeah, he stunk in the 80s, didn't
They
they?
they
Yeah.
they were not winning anything. The Red Sox were coming up. This was the Dwight Evans days. I mean, we
Mhm.
talked about it how many times every week in this podcast, right? The Jim Rice, the
Roger Clemens.
Mike Greenwell,
Mhm.
Oh,
right?
Oh, Greenwell. Yeah.
But for those years, man, I mean,
stand that guy.
Yeah.
you guys had a phenomenal team, and
Yeah.
that rivalry was strong despite the Yankees sucking.
Yeah.
So a true rivalry doesn't go by
Mm.
who's better and who's worse. If anything, as the underdog, that makes you even more feverish when you beat them,
Mm.
right? I
Yep.
mean, that's the definition of a rivalry. I'm going to play spoiler and I'm going to mess it up. I don't think the rivalry is diluted because you guys decided not to spend some money this week.
Yeah. I think, I think a lot of things have to do with it. I think if you look at the other sports too, um, the rivalries aren't the same there either. Uh, the Celtics Lakers isn't what it was. Um, the Celtics Pistons. The biggest rivalry I saw, where I know I'm crossing sports, but when I first started watching basketball, was Celtics Philadelphia. Um, and you just don't see that stuff anymore. I don't know what the reason is. Um,
I'll tell you, as a Packers fan,
yeah,
Chicago,
yeah, the Bears,
Mm.
you
the
know
old,
what I'm saying, man.
yeah,
But the Lions,
Mm.
it's still there.
yeah,
It's
and
still
I think in the NFC East they have big rivalries there.
yeah.
Um,
All the teams.
you know, but I think I don't know what it's about. I don't know whether it's about. It could be interleague play. It could be free agency and players not staying with the team as long. Um, you know,
Mm.
like I don't, I don't think we'll ever approach what we saw 20 years ago this week in terms
Yeah.
of a Red Sox Yankees rivalry, just because, the players are compelling and it got ugly. Um, and, I think I've never, I've, I'm not going to say I never hated the Yankees. I have, but I don't hate them like other people do. And I know I
Football.
hated them at that time, but it was only because of one guy, and I just fucking hated him. I still do.
Who's that?
Clemens. Oh,
Uh, yeah.
I can't stand that fucking guy. And so I think that kind of led, when he pitched here and he switched, and then they the Who's Your Daddy and all this other
Oh yeah,
stuff. And
yeah.
the fact that I lived there too
Mm.
also added to it.
So you don't think that a Red Sox? Yeah. What do they play? 18 games now,
Something
Less
like that.
right? 18 games. back in the day, I think it was like what, 27,
Mm.
right? They would
Yeah.
face each other 27 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds
If
right.
they have that much impact on your playoff chances
True.
in the rest of the division and
Yep.
how well, not only how well they do against you, but rooting for Baltimore to beat the
Mhm.
hell out of the Yankees. Now you don't care.
Yeah.
Well, Baltimore won, right?
Yep.
You don't care now
Mm.
because you know what? There's another built-in so many wins when Pittsburgh comes to town, right? Yeah, great. It's awesome to see Paul Skeens, but you know what? That's what the All-Star game was for. That's why the All-Star game was actually exciting.
Yeah.
That's why the All-Star game was really cool to see. That's why people like spring training. Because you know what? You could see those stars that you wouldn't normally see, right? And you'd be able to get that. And I'll tell you what, again, interleague play, 97, no real access to the internet. I know it is around, but no real access to the internet. National sports media wasn't what it is now. You couldn't just hop on your damn phone and look up stats like we've been doing with this. You needed to know the story of the other teams. And the way you did it was looking at the box scores while you're taking a shit.
Yeah.
That's what you did,
Yeah.
right? I mean, honestly, now you have access to that. You can see all these players' highlights. You can watch Baseball Network. You can listen to podcasts. You can see the local broadcast. Interleague play has ruined rivalries.
And I guess where I come down on it is I keep thinking of that quote that I think is attributed to Mark Cuban that he actually levied against the NFL, which is the line, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered, and how I think baseball, you could apply it a little bit to the idea of interleague play, where they just were just like, well, let's try to expand it. Let's have them play more teams because when it started in its infancy, not only was there obviously just less information at your fingertips like there is now, but they also did keep it limited. They made it like a featured only before the All-Star game, only certain teams, only certain divisions that I think they only had you play your counterpart division of the other league. And then from because I was looking at this just to refresh my memory because I remembered it being more limited. And then for a stretch of time, they kind of did round robin where then they like each season, now you're playing this a division from the National League, and then you're playing this division, kind of like the way they do a little bit with football. And I
That's
sort of
exactly how
feel,
they do it.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
exactly how they do it in football.
and and I feel like that still has a chance to keep a little bit of the magic to it or a little bit of like the allure to it without it becoming just like meh, like it's
Yeah.
just any old thing.
So let's look at another hypothetical, Greco. So if the Mets won their series, do you think the rivalry between the Yankees and Mets would have been like,
For the people in New York,
yeah,
it would have been
Mm.
awesome.
yeah,
For us, we hate them both. Who cares?
yeah? I'll tell you this: when they met in 2000, I really enjoyed that. I thought the Mets should have played better in that series, but that was a fun. It was such a novelty to get on the subway and go from one
Yeah,
ballpark
how cool
to
is
the
that?
other, and it's a World
Yeah.
Series. Right out loud.
Would that have been better or worse had they not played 5 times that season?
Mm.
Well, funny you say that because that was the year Fuckface hit Piazza in the head.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah. So
well,
that created a nice little rivalry.
yeah,
Right? That fueled it. Yeah.
Mm.
Oh yeah. 100%. And I guess that's my that actually, in some ways, kind of proves my other rivalry scheme. Familiarity, in that case,
Breeds contempt.
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
But I'll tell you what, the reason why I even cared about that series was because my boy got on the Mets, was hitting 314 by the end of the season with like 25 home runs.
Which guy?
Greatest leadoff hitter of all time.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
My
Ricky,
man
Yeah.
was killing it that year.
Yeah.
At
he
like
was on the Mets. Oh,
Briefly.
2000. Yeah,
totally don't remember that.
he was one of the catalysts to get them to the championship.
Was he ever not the catalyst on any team he played on?
No, he really was.
Hmm.
Yeah. But so Rolo, you took my solution away from me.
Oh, well,
My
look at that.
solution is something mirrored like they did before, but looking at the NFL and how, what, if you had um, the teams rotate against certain divisions
Mhm.
every year,
Yep.
that would breed some familiarity with those teams, but it would also build anticipation. Oh, you know what? We're not going to be able to see, St. Louis this year, but I can't wait to see Goldschmidt and Arenado, and you know, I mean, come on, you know. But at the same time, one of the things that I think that the NFL does really well, and I'm not a huge fan of how the NFL's run, but I'll tell you what, their schedule's
Mhm.
fantastic because the season opens up with a rivalry from the previous year.
Mhm.
Whether that's a Super Bowl rematch, whether that's a playoff rematch,
Mhm.
that's how it starts off. And I get it. Baseball's different. They got to schedule the games out ahead of time, so you can't really do that. But you know what? Halfway through the season, you're going to have an idea of who's going to be a playoff contender and who's not, right? Halfway through the season, you open up the series, and maybe that's a bonus one, right? So for example, um, you have some great storylines mid-season between Shohei and Aaron Judge. Both are
Mhm.
probably going to be MVPs. They're both doing well to the point where their teams are probably going to be in the playoffs together, right? So in July or June, when they pick the schedule, you could theoretically say, hey, you know what? We're going to open up the season with the Yankees and Dodgers. How cool would that be? Judge versus Shohei, bill it as that, right? And
Mhm.
now you could have sat there and said, oh, two of the best players in the league. And now in retro, you're probably going to say that they both won the MVP, right? And now you can say that they both won the World Series and they fought each other. So now he has a rematch of the World Series to open up the season, right? How cool is that? And not only that, you could still do the rotation. And now your division, you don't face each other four times with only three
Mhm.
game schedules, right? Now you face each other. Well, I'm sorry, six times with three game schedules. Now you have those 4 game series, and you do it 7 times, 8 times, and you still have the rivalries, right? So Mets and Yankees still go at it. Dodgers Angels still go at it, right? Red Sox Braves still go at it, right? Phillies Pittsburgh still go at it. Baltimore Washington still go at it. Houston, Texas still goes at it, right? I mean, all those built-in geographical rivalries still
Mhm.
happen
Mhm.
because we have 162 damn games.
Yeah.
We can fit it in.
Yeah.
I would rather see that and then a rotation,
Mhm.
right?
So would you say, Greco, your problem is games like the Marlins Red Sox?
Listen, if the Marlins and Red Sox um if that's part of the rotation, and the Red Sox have to face the Marlins,
Mhm.
the Braves,
Mhm.
the Nats,
Yeah.
the Phillies, and the Mets. Great, because that adds to the season, right? That creates drama in the season. But if you go and you see the Marlins for 3 games as opposed to 6, and that's what I'm proposing, right? You go to them, they come to you,
Yeah.
right? You impact their season more, they impact your season more. It becomes more important.
So for you, it's more about the quantity than the rivalry itself or the games themselves.
Yeah, and I also think the scarcity too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in this model, you wouldn't see the Marlins except for every 3 years or so,
Yeah.
right? Because one time you'd be
Mhm.
the East, the
Mhm.
Central, the West, back
Yep.
to the East.
Mhm.
And so that scarcity creates impact,
And then that creates more games for your American League rivals
right?
to really get more entrenched and invested in those particular games.
Right, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I also like the idea of it being like, so now I'm also thinking about, drawing from other leagues. The NBA has just last year started this like in-season tournament, which at first sounded kind of silly, but then as it was going on in the middle of the season, I was like, this is kind of cool. Celtics didn't end up acquitting themselves very well during it, which is fine because we ended up winning the title. But the it kind of created this nice little feature kind of mini event in the middle of the season that otherwise can feel kind of long. And so interleague play, where I can picture that being interesting, is if it was this like featured, like, I don't know, 2 week stretch, or maybe it's two different 2 week
Middle of the
stretches.
season.
Yeah, where it's like interleague, and that gets pumped up as being like this like headline, like, and you can even figure out a way like which teams you're gonna pump up, and like which players you're gonna pump up on each team to really, make it, I don't know, stand out more.
And it's gonna stand out more if it's not just like, oh, it's a random Thursday and we're playing the Padres today. Cool.
Mhm.
It just it loses its luster if it's just like any other game. Because then it's like, why in the hell have two different leagues then? Like it's become so samey now,
Yeah,
especially with the elimination of the pitcher hitting in
I
the
Yeah.
agree with
National
you.
League, where it's like, well, why do we even have National League American League anymore?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. The World Series is sometimes played before the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
I
Uh-huh.
mean, you could argue that with the Yankees and Red Sox, but that was because of their rivalry. That's because
Mm.
the rivalry was so fresh and so strong. And now with the balanced schedule, it's not garbage. Now, and I'm naive about the other sports like schedules. The only one I really know about is baseball and football. That's it. If you know, I do know like football. If you have a shit game coming on a Monday night football game, they'll move it.
Mm.
Yes.
They'll move it,
Yep.
right? Baseball should take advantage of it. You have 162 games in a year.
You got to be able to flex things sometimes.
Tell me you can't figure out. I mean,
Me,
I get
yeah, but remember too, you got a week before each game in the NFL, whereas baseball you don't.
I'm with you, but think about it this way: if I have less moving parts because now every game, every day, there's at least one interleague play,
Mhm.
right? I mean, it's almost half. I think it's almost like 50-50,
Yep.
right? If I sit there and I dilute that down and, well, I'm sorry, condense that down, and there's less moving parts and there's more typical series, that allows for that tension to be there in the potential. I'm not saying every time, the potential for a big rivalry game to be showcased on a national televised, and how wonderful would that be? Baseball's losing television contracts now. Bally Sports, I don't know if you guys saw it. Bally Sports is backing out of all of their contracts with baseball teams, with the exception of Atlanta. Atlanta is the only one they want to keep.
Huh.
That's interesting.
So now all that revenue is going to be gone. And I'll tell you what, it's because viewership is down. Am I going to watch 4 games against the Colorado Rockies, or am I going to watch 4 more games against the Yankees?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
As an A's fan, am I going to watch 4 more games against the Texas Rangers or the Seattle Mariners, or am I going to watch, I don't know, what, the Nationals, San Diego?
Yeah. So you're saying kind of keep the rivalries with teams like Oakland and San Francisco. Well,
yeah, I don't know what's going to happen there.
More,
but yeah, keep those.
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with that.
Right.
I just remember Jerry Remy talking about how much he hated it, and I never knew why.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think for him it's tradition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, how cool was it though when you were going to go into the World Series and you had no idea about the team you were about to play?
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing those players for the first time, and it's on the biggest stage, and how important that was. Yeah. You're learning about, wow. I mean, that's why movies are so good, because you don't know who the villain is until the end.
Yeah. Well, you look at it too, right? So if you look at that 2003 World Series that the Marlins beat the Yankees and Beckett won the MVP, the Yankees couldn't touch him. But then when he came to the Red Sox and, like he would pitch against them 4 times a year, he would suffer the same fates as Pedro did, because they would see him so often.
Yeah.
I still blame him for my second knee injury. That son of a bitch. I was on me and my friends from high school used to go up for like a week up in New Hampshire and just kind of, basically watch sports, play video games, eat bacon, and drink beer like the whole weekend, and the whole week. It was great. It was like in the Loon Mountain, like someone had a condo that, like a family connection where we all just pitched in, and it was a great time. And I remember during that week in 2006, so Beckett was still, I think that was his first season with us, and I remember being like, "Oh, Beckett, this is awesome!" And I remember I think it was in June, and we were gonna go and we were playing the Yankees, and I remember being like, "I'm gonna watch this, I'm gonna watch this game," and Beckett just got freaking lit up. He got obliterated to the point where, like, it was second or third inning. I'm just like, fuck this. I'm turning this off. Let's go play catch. And I brought my glove and I went to go just play catch. And my stupid friend Manoush kept like throwing the ball over my head. And I'm not Captain Fitness over here. I'm not the most athletic guy in the world. Grego knows he's played catch with me before. He always has to kind of ease me into playing. And so Manoush was throwing the ball over my head, so I'm trying to not have to always chase after it, and I'm like trying to back up, and then at one point he throws it, and I reach up to try to like catch it so I don't have to run after it, and I catch it, but then I land off balance on my already surgically repaired knee, and I felt it pop, and I was like, ah, and it was sore for the rest of the week, and I didn't need surgery that time. It swelled up, but I was able to get it like feeling okay again. But then I think that started the downward spiral to me needing to get surgery the following summer. And
Josh Beckett.
I blame Josh Beckett for it.
I'll tell you what, I was secretly hoping you were going to tell me that you were trying to practice a pickoff move.
Oh, gosh.
In hopes to inspire him, and that's how you hurt your knee.
No. That I'm far more pedestrian than that.
So I was going to recommend something to you guys, and I think this was during a World Series with the Yankees and Dodgers. There's an exchange when Lasorda goes to the mound with this guy named Doug Rao. I
Mm,
highly recommend you see that.
I think it
Hmm.
did.
Hilarious, hilarious exchange.
Yeah, that's when he doesn't he use the time pretty much to berate the umpire.
That's another one, but
Oh, okay.
Rao doesn't want to come out of the game. And Tommy's like, I don't give a fuck whether you want to come
Oh
out of it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
Oh,
like, it's like you can bitch all you fucking want. I'm not going to, you're coming out of the game.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm the manager. Hmm.
Hmm. I think I think without interleague play, and maybe I'm wrong because I get it. The unions like it because it gives longevity to players. But I think without interleague play, we'd still have pitchers.
How does it give longevity to players?
I
What do
was
you
just
mean
going
by
to
that?
say that. That's an interesting thought. How so?
Yeah.
So without the DH,
Yeah.
you had half the teams that wouldn't necessarily employ David Ortiz
Mm-hmm.
or an Albert Pujols at the end of his career or a Frank Thomas towards the end of his career because the liabilities now on defense. Sure, they can swing the bat, but if you had to play them in the field,
Mhm.
you're not hiring them. If you have universal DH, you still have all the same pitchers, but now you're creating another position for maybe an aging superstar, maybe a guy who doesn't necessarily have
I see what you're saying.
fielding ability, but can hit.
Mm.
And so that's why the unions really try to push the universal DH. Um, and but again, I don't think without um, the interleague play that's really too much of consideration. I could be wrong.
You don't think that would happen without interleague play? I don't know. That's an interesting question.
Well, like I said, I don't know. I don't know the pressure that the union would have on it. I know that was part of the CBA that just got passed. That's when it got passed,
Mhm.
and that was a consideration. That was something the union pushed, the Players Association. So could be,
Well,
I
then,
mean, that
this
would
is
raise the salaries too.
yeah,
If they go to another team for a DH, and that would raise the salaries and
considerably.
everybody.
Yeah,
Yep.
this just kind of sounds like another example, though, of the players' union being chiefly responsible for baseball shooting itself in the foot. I sort of feel like
A
they're a
lot of
little
it.
too focused on what's best for them, which to a certain degree, I understand. Get your money in the craft that you've been working on your entire life and shed a tear for billionaire owners, that's for sure. But uh, it feels like too often they're myopic about just like, what can I get right now? And there's not always enough kind of long view of what the health of the game is going to be. And it's like, well, the sport itself that you're currently making money from is not going to be around in a way that you used to love it as if if you keep like um digging your feet in the sand on some of these issues. And I'm talking about also like some of these other like pace of play
Mhm.
concerns that have existed with like the pitch
Yep.
clock and stuff. That like it feels like it's just been anecdotally whenever I hear about that it's the players union that's constantly like putting up a huge stink about this stuff, and it doesn't feel like they're remembering that it's the fans who pay your salaries, and you're supposed to be entertaining us at the end of the day. So please be entertaining.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, Quinn, because uh, I almost always side with the players. I do always
Mm,
side with the players over the owners. The owners
mm.
can do this, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, I think, but with the pace of play and the new rules that came in, those have been good for baseball. and I don't side with the players at all on that.
Mm-hmm.
Ridiculous, because you can't do this, or like, come on, dude.
Garciaparra would have been out in a second.
Yeah,
In
like you
today's
can't dick
rules.
around at home plate. And I don't think the umpires always get it right, but even when they get it wrong, I don't complain about it, because get in the plate and do what you need to do, dude. Stop fucking around.
Yep.
I as a baseball, I think I'm a little more conservative as far as what I mean, because listen, I offered a solution, and the reason why I offered a solution is because Quinn brought up the football schedule. I will tell you that my ideal solution is I don't care if Atlanta plays Boston every year. Make the World Series special again. Right? MAGA, right? Actually, Mawas.
Mawa.
Mawasa, right?
Masa.
Make the World Series special again, right?
Yeah.
Because I will tell you what, if we didn't have the Dodgers play the Yankees in May, how cool would this be?
Mm.
You have two of the best hitters going against each other.
Yeah.
Right? Fantastic. First time all year they get to see each other. What's going to happen? There's suspense in that. Well, now you can sit there and, last time Shohei Ohtani went, 45 for 2, right? As you boys like to talk about how godly the boy is, right? Listen, I'll tell you what, when it comes down to it, yeah, I agree. I think the players, I'll always side with the guys who put the spikes on in the gloves. I know there's a necessary evil for ownership too, though, because I'll tell you what, if you gave these folks the business, a business, and try to market themselves and put themselves on the field and handle all that stuff, the guys playing on the field would not be able to do as good of a job as some of these owners. And I have probably the worst owner in charge of my team. So I have a salty view of ownership, but I think that there's a necessary evil between the two of them.
Well, it's kind of akin to, if you draw the correlation to filmmaking, it's kind of like what, to a certain degree, what studios or producers' roles are, which is to like, okay, actors and directors and writers all are like the artists, and they all have all sorts of ideas that can cost a whole heck of a lot of money, and sometimes teeter into indulgence where it's just kind of like, and I think you've even seen this, not that I've seen the movie yet, but from all I've read about it, Francis Ford Coppola's new film, Megalopolis, it kind of sounds like because he self-financed it, he didn't have anyone on the reins on it. And as a result, it sounds like it's kind of an impenetrable disaster of a film to watch. And
Well,
versus studios or producers having at least a little bit of a check to say, like, well, like, we're not just going to let you like have completely free reign over whatever you want to do, because sometimes creativity is born from that kind of push and pull dynamic and a little bit of that tension that almost kind of forces you to 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 work within certain parameters. It almost kind of forces creativity and ingenuity to a certain extent.
that's going to happen.
Owners have none, by the way.
Yeah.
Other than Mark Cuban. You mentioned the one owner I do like, Quinn, Mark Cuban.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the main reason I loved him is because he would just fuck with David Stern endlessly. And I loved it every second of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah.
But he's a very forward thinking guy. He's unusual as an owner.
Mm-hmm.
So
most owners, like Kraft, is not bathing himself in glory right now.
No,
because he wants himself to look good, and he just won't. He won't acknowledge most of these owners in baseball and any sport. They don't realize that that when you win, there's benefits that you can't see, and we look at Vegas, and how Oakland's going to Vegas. One of the reasons that they're doing that is because, they had hockey expansion go to Vegas. What do they know about hockey in Vegas? Nothing.
Football
But
too.
yeah, but because they put an expansion team that went to the finals in their first year and won a championship 5 years later, like now they have a huge fan base.
Yep.
So if any team has that kind of success on the ice or on the field or on the court, you're going to bring in fans, and that's going to bring in more business, which is why the Raiders came and the A's are coming.
Mm-hmm.
Huge part of it.
I'll tell you what. So I just pulled it up. Bally's Sports Group, which is basically like Fox Sports One, I think. It's a Diamond Sports Group. They're cutting ties with the Reds, Tigers, Royals, Angels, Marlins, Brewers, Cardinals, Rays.
Yeesh.
What's going to happen is kind of like what you were talking about, Rolo. It's going to be on baseball to probably produce those games. You're not going to have Bally's staff producing those games anymore. And so
It'll be
you're
on
going to be
MLB
going,
TV.
yeah, MLB TV,
Yep.
right? Through
Yep.
the MLB app, you're going to have those broadcasts. Is it going to be the better? Is it going to be the same? I have no idea. But again, let me ask you this. St. Louis is losing their television contract. A storied franchise like St. Louis. If the Cardinals were to seed the Cubs 9 more times a year, would that bring more revenue TV wise? Would more people be watching that than watching them play the Chicago? No, I'm not even going to say that. Than watching them play the Seattle Mariners.
Mm-hmm.
That could definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yep.
The game is being diluted, and you're losing the history of the game. These pizza boxes that people slide into in the bases, right? I mean, all
Now
those are.
the way I always bring up the Yankees and wanting to shit on them. This is your topic that you
Oh, yeah.
bring up almost
Yeah.
every week.
Listen,
Those freaking faces.
I'm a middle infielder, and my game is defense, right? I get it. Listen, and I know it's player safety, and that's something the Player Association wanted. The Player Association was talking about the illegal slides. The Players Association and the owners wanted to because they want their stars on the field, right? They want them on the field.
So that's why they did it. It's a safety issue.
Safety issue.
Interesting.
Yeah, more territory to slide into the base creates less opportunity for collisions. Right.
Interesting.
Lack of physicality could be an interesting element at play as to why there's less animosity or rivalry or juice in some of these rivalries.
Sure, yeah. But I'll tell you what, was it J.R. Redmond? Was he the one that slid into Posey
Oh, I forget who
with
it
the
was.
Marlins? Yeah, exactly.
I can't
Right.
remember.
But you do remember.
I remember the collision.
Posey
Yeah.
getting hurt, yeah.
Yeah. But the Giants and the Marlins don't have a rivalry. But I'll tell you what, you remember when Posada was sitting there pointing at his head from the dugout,
Yes.
right? When Manny was thrown at,
And then he
remember,
charged Clemens. Yeah.
he didn't even hit him.
No.
But you remember,
and that wasn't even really high and tight. I think Manny was just too keyed up and ready to go.
So I don't think I don't think you're wrong, Greco. I would just say that whether it's the Marlins, whether if you're the Giants and whether it's the Marlins or even the A's, when Canseco is coming in ready to, yeah, I know Canseco didn't play at the same time, but like if he's coming in, when I grew up, that was a normal play.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm with you. And that was impactful. But you remember Fosse
Right.
and Rose,
Yep.
who did it then,
Yep.
right? And that was just as impactful to Fosse's career
Yep.
as was with Posey, right? Listen, I I can tell you, and the reason why I hate the bastard, almost every time that John Lackey hit one of my guys,
Fucking wacky.
Yeah.
right?
Among the most punchable faces in all of
Yes. Amen there, Quinn.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
like the rivalry, the sports. I can tell you, probably you give me enough time, I'll tell you 100 stories about some fantastic, amazing, dramatic games that I watched my A's play. And out of those 100, probably 40 were in the playoffs or in the World Series. And maybe all but 10 of the rest were against the divisional rivals.
Mm.
I was going to give you guys another video to see. So if you want to see an old school play of somebody taking out the second baseman on a double play, Google Hal McRae, Willie Randolph.
Willie Randolph. Right? He was manager of the Mets for a while, right?
Yeah. This is when he was a player at second base for the Yankees.
Mm-hmm.
Watch Hal McRae go into Willie Randolph in the playoffs. That was a huge rivalry in the 70s and 80s, by the way, the Royals and the Yankees. Look at some of the interviews George Brett has about the Yankees. That was a huge rivalry back in the day.
George Brett. I feel like my only frame of reference for him is he played before I was a sentient of baseball, but
That's
wasn't
the
he the
one
one?
problem I have with this blog is that I feel fucking old.
No, is he the one who absolutely looked like he was going to eviscerate an umpire after
Yes.
he
1 second.
said that the pine tar was a little
Yes.
too high on his bat?
Yep.
He went charging out of the dugout.
Pine tar home run, yeah. They so Billy Martin caused all that.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
Was that Yankee Stadium when that happened?
Yeah. Yep.
It was.
He had a home run off of Gossage to basically take the lead and win the game. And I think they gave the Yankees the game. I think they had to replay an inning or something like that. I can't remember. But yeah, but that was one of the strangest things I ever saw. Billy Martin would do anything, man. That guy, absolutely anything.
You know what this is reminding me of? Another tangent. Of course, I always bring things to movies or TV shows. Did you ever see? What was it called?
There was that mini series that actually ran on ESPN in the 2000s that focused on the Billy Martin Yankees of the late 70s, where Reggie Jackson, hit 3 bombs. He became Mr. October.
Yeah,
And
the Bronx is burning.
The Bronx is burning. Yes, that's what it was called. And it paralleled the Yankees, kind of the pot boiler nature of that team with Billy Martin and Steinbrenner with the Summer of Sam, and it was one of those early I was surprised with how good it was, and I think John Turturro played Billy Martin, and it was actually pretty good. Did you ever see that, Greco?
I haven't, but I've heard of it.
Pretty good.
Yep.
So I did some research, and I may get interrupted. My little girl decided to come downstairs.
Oh.
But Scott Cousins is who ran into Posey.
Oh, who the hell is that?
Interesting. Wow.
So really, and I'm not trying to make a highlight out of an injury, but the Buster Posey rule came about this. We don't remember the name.
Yeah. Yep.
Historically, that would never happen. I mean, to go back to the World Series, right? You're talking about a storied franchise of the Yankees. What other people or what other team has a movie about them played by John Turturro? And I mean, come on, Charlie
Mm.
O was just as interesting as the Steinbrenners, and but I'll tell you what, you now have the franchise that brought Jackie Robinson
Mm.
into the game
Mm.
against the most historic franchise in sports.
Yep.
And it's just another. I saw um, I saw an article that was saying, why is the Yankees and Dodgers World Series bad for baseball?
Shouldn't be.
And I didn't read it, but just the impact of a headline, or the fact that there's a headline. You know, I'll tell you what. So I was a subscriber to ESPN the magazine for years, and I remember um, the reason why I cut my subscription was because when the White Sox had won the World Series
Mm.
for the first time, right, since the Black Sox scandal,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Their article in there was like 2 pages long. But you know what they led with? Was on the cover of ESPN the magazine? Barry Bonds and Belko, and how
Uh,
dirty the game was because of steroids. And
Running with the salacious story. Mm.
that overshadowed a historic win for one of the most historic franchises. The romance of the game is dying
Yeah.
because
Mm.
we're deluded.
And I remember the White Sox winning that World Series very well because that's when you started to have all these idiot specialists in the bullpen. But the difference with that was, uh, I think the bullpen of that White Sox team in the American League Championship Series, in a 5-game series, the bullpen pitched 2/3 of an inning the entire series. They had 4 complete games.
Early.
Blessed be Mark Burley. What a quick worker.
Freddie Garcia, Burley,
Mm.
Contreras,
Mm.
who's Garland.
John
Oh, yeah,
Garland.
yeah, yeah. Garland. Yep.
Yep.
That was a
It
great
was,
team, that White Sox team.
yeah, that was a
Very
fantastic.
different now.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
but
Yes.
losing its team of all time, I think. Right?
Mm.
Mm.
Gone are the days of Kernarko,
Mm.
Thomas, Krasinski.
Yep.
I mean, it's but that should be the cycle of a team.
Well, hey, now wasn't Brzezinski part of a nice little interleague moment there between him and the Cubs when
Yeah,
Brzezinski got punched in the face?
yeah.
That was fun.
By Barrett. And
Yeah, yeah,
listen,
yeah.
I'll tell you what. Again, don't get rid of that rivalry.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's fantastic.
Yep.
That I think is good for the game.
Mm-hmm.
You get your home, and I like the way that baseball does it. To be honest with you, where you have your geographical rival, and everybody plays them the same weekend,
I feel
right?
like,
Same time every year.
Yep.
yeah, and with the Red Sox, I remember early on in interleague play, they tried doing a similar thing with the Braves because, there used to be the Boston Braves. So
They
I
still
think they
do.
were trying to
That's
do like
that's Boston's rival still.
that always just feels artificial to me. Like I understand what they're trying to do, but it always just felt kind of forced. Like it doesn't have the same juice as like, you
Mhm.
know, the other actual in town.
Listen, just because your Rogers is not as good as
Uh-huh.
you could be Tampa in Miami.
Mm-hmm.
So be happy. At least you have a
This is
historical
true.
franchise. In you talk about teams who have a history of being successful, and how great is it to see them early? And listen, if you guys get your shit together and they have their shit together, that's a World Series preview. How
Mm.
cool is that?
So speaking of the World Series, I don't know what we're doing for the next topic. I'll tell you right now, I could do an entire hour on Game 6 in 1986. Not just the game itself, but like the aftermath of that game.
Mm. Well, hey, I'm going to bring it back to movies again. It's a great movie starring Michael Keaton called Game 6 that all
Really?
revolves around that time.
It's really interesting. It's a little kind of, it almost feels like a play sort of movie, like, very focused on practically a one man show, as I recall. It's been a number of years since I've seen it, but I remember it was one of those movies I don't even know if it had a theatrical run. It just showed up on DVD one day when I was working at Blockbuster Video, and I was like, oh, I haven't seen Mike Keaton or anything for a while. This is when he was in kind of a full spell, and it was good. Strong.
Yeah. There's a lot that's come out since
Hmm.
1986.
Interesting.
I would love that. Maybe we can plan next week's after this one, and I think that's a contender for sure.
Hmm.
So, any
Very
other thoughts on
fascinating
Interleague, boys?
situation. Is it what?
Any other thoughts on Interleague?
I hope they don't do away with it. I'll say that. Um, I don't disagree with you, Greco. I don't. Yeah, there was a lot of like kind of interesting scenarios there that I hadn't thought of, like in terms of the union and the SCBA and how it created the universal DH, which I never thought would happen.
Mm.
I
Yeah,
never
I was hoping it
I
would.
never thought baseball would make that change. Because it takes forever to change anything in baseball.
Well, I feel like this last CBA was pretty player association heavy
Mm.
as far as like what got done. With I think the strike worked. You had the increase in the minimum salaries. You had the increase in minor league salaries. You had um, the implementation of the universal DH. You had, I want to say, some changes in to like service time and how that impacted specifically, um, oh geez, our arbitration eligible players.
Mm.
Things like the 5-10 rule, you mean?
Yeah, so with arbitration eligible players, you're locked up, right? So what was happening was your service time didn't start until you played so many games in the majors. So that's why you had a lot of teams holding off on bringing players up so they could have another year of player control,
Oh,
right?
Mm. Mm.
And so that's been affected. You had, um, the way that, um, you know, something that wasn't a part of it, something that came out afterwards. And I think that this is something that was kind of a byproduct of it, and that people are able to talk about it. But the Phantom, um, I still call it, um, the oh, no, I'm not going to remember it now. Um, well, now it was a DL, the disabled list. No, yeah, that's what it
Mm.
was, disabled list,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It
I
used
still
to be
call
called the disabled list. Now it's called what? The injured list, I
it, yeah.
think.
But teams using that to manipulate
Mm.
playing time. Hey,
15
listen, you're going to be
day,
hurt for a little
60
while.
day. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to be hurt for a little while,
Uh-huh.
right? I mean, that kind of stuff. Um, it was a really heavy players union. Tony Clark did a good job. as far as being the head of the players union. Now the players, some of them don't like him, and we're really vocal against what they were talking about. But I think, as with anything, we're going to see an ownership now that's going to push back and say, hey, by the way, here are the consequences of what you did.
Mhm.
Right.
And this is
To
where I
the
think
owners.
this is where nerds are coming into play because I feel
Oh,
like owners are starting to pay nerds more than they are players because they're figuring out that there's ways to skirt around paying a high-end starter if you can just it's just string a bunch of relievers together to pitch a game, which freaking sucks. And that's where the owners and these freaking nerds are starting to have a detrimental impact on the entertainment value of the game.
Well,
that's
I'll
another
tell you.
thing we could talk about all day. Oh,
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. Another impact of this is something you're seeing with contracts. How many young guys are signing 10-year contracts? The
Yeah.
Bobby Witts, the Ronald Acuñas, the
Bryce Harper did that. What was it,
Bryce
13-year
Harper.
contract?
Yeah, I mean, but you know, these guys who are buying out the years of
Arbitration.
arbitration
Mm.
oh, I
in
never
some of
thought
the
of that.
first few years of free agency, and you know what? The owners are sitting there saying, "Hey, it's worth us paying them early now instead of just losing them." Because it used
Yeah.
to be that if they were offered arbitration um, and they denied it, that they would the team that would lose them would get a first round pick, right? So they would offer them a contract. If the player denied it, then they would wallow in free agency,
Hmm.
right? Because no other team wanted to give up their first round pick for a guy who probably would be, a good player, maybe an everyday player, but I'm losing that draft pick if I sign. So that's another thing that went by the wayside is how that process goes. So you're seeing the pushback from the owners. And sure, who's right, who's wrong, right? I mean, you gain ground, you got to give it at some point. And I think the same thing goes with just how the league is run. If they lose those TV contracts, and again, I do think this
Mm.
has an impact from interleague play. If they lose those TV contracts, well, guess what? Now they don't have to pay Bally's,
Mm.
right? Now they can collect all the revenue themselves. Bally's used to collect the ad revenue. MLB gets it now. Are they really going to care about what kind of product looks like when they can
Yeah.
take all the revenue for themselves? They're
I
cutting out
mean,
the man.
if the ad shares keep going down, maybe they will.
Yeah, but maybe.
Yeah. So what Quinn's talking about is the demand going down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well,
Um,
and that's the product.
yep.
So it's all interesting.
Yep.
Hmm.
I, as much as I like the nostalgia of the game. I mean, how many bunts don't we see now? And I know bunts aren't very exciting, but I'll tell you what, how
It's
many
it's
bunts won a game?
I was
it's
gonna. I
all
like it.
yeah.
I like it.
You know,
Mhm. It's all about context. It's all about context. Yeah, if someone's just going up there and all they're doing is bunting, yeah, it's going to get kind of annoying. But the context of it makes everything. And I mean, uh, um, something like like a suicide squeeze that involves like a bunt or anything like that. I mean, that's excitement right there.
yeah,
Yep.
getting a pitcher to lay down a bunt to move a guy up.
Hmm.
And
It also
anybody.
shows, do these players, even pitchers who are, so coddled, do they have their fundamentals down? Or
Mhm.
will they reveal poor fundamentals by not being able to get a bunt down?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. You know who I also think is another catalyst or an example of why you could get rid of the universal DH is Shohei. Because he's showing that you can still hit and pitch. And so if you had a pitcher like a Bumgarner, or you had a pitcher like a Zambrano who could go yard and hit, right? You could still do
Even
that.
Sabathia even showed some ability with the bat too.
Sabathia could hit.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Bumgarner,
Sabathia
I
could hit.
remember being a really good hitter.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
He would pinch hit.
Yeah.
They'd bring him in off the bench to pinch hit. I mean, you know, these are all things that, I think is dead in the game now. The idea that now you have to have a pitcher face 3 batters minimum, right?
Yes.
Unless it's the end of an inning
Something
or
like
an
that.
injury. Excuse me. But I'll tell you what, you talked about double switches. Taylor, when was the last time? Quinn, when was the last time you remember pitcher coming off the mound, going to play right field for a batter, and then coming back in?
Yeah.
I vaguely remember Cora doing it this season. I think Cora actually did it this season once. But the thing that stands out the most to me is I'm pretty sure John Farrell bungled one back when he was our manager.
Probably.
Because he was kind of a dunderhead.
I mean, how hard is it, though, to manage a team when if you made a move on the mound, changed your batting order?
Definitely changes things. That's why the interleague play can be really interesting if it's given in small titrated doses.
But that's gone.
Yeah.
So that interest is gone. That interest in the World Series is gone. Being able to see Pedro have to hit, right? Or worried about, like, all right, well, hey, listen, his spot in the batting order is coming up. If there's one out and men in scoring position, even if he's pitching all right, we may have to warm up the bullpen. That is a strong case for excitement in the game.
Yeah.
So I'm going to push back on that a little bit. So when you get to these important games, right? So the one I keep thinking back to is Diamondbacks Yankees, where Jay Bell lays down the bunt. Rivera gets right off the mound and gets it, and then puts the pressure on the defense. Brocious gets it, and then fails to throw it to first because of the situation he had. Like, he just didn't think of it. He was just thinking about getting the out. I think situations like that can still come up. And then if you look, you look at the Red Sox in that game 6, McNamara taking Clemens out. He was putting his helmet on to, go to bat. I don't know how he switched positions in the order at that time. There's so many other things going on. But I'd be interested to see how that worked out.
Yeah. So you could literally put in, so like, say if you wanted to later on in the game. So I can do this now with my team because we hit our pitchers. We don't have a DH. Right? So I can literally have my pitcher hit 9th and say, you know what? I want to bring my right fielder in. I want to change him out. So I'm going to put his replacement in that 9th spot. But I'm going to take out the 6th hitter and put my pitcher in for there. Right? So that's the double switch. Right?
Yep.
But that's gone. That strategy, that chess game is gone.
Yep.
And I respected the National League for it.
Yep.
Did. But at the same time, I like the American League game too. But I respect the National League game. I always thought it was an advantage for a National League team at the home compared to an American League team.
Definitely.
Right?
Definitely.
Because David Ortiz suddenly became a liability at first base. Now, he played great against St. Louis. We already talked about that.
Yeah.
But he became a liability. Edgar Martinez. I hated him until he retired.
He's one of my favorite hitters.
Unbelievable.
Love that
And,
guy.
So that for him to put it in perspective, I watched him crush my team so many damn times because my man just knew how to hit.
Mm-hmm.
And I could feel like we're doing something and he could just spark a rally or get that hit when he needed to. He was what I didn't want to see getting up. I don't know if you can equate that to a Yankee, but Edgar Martinez was a phenomenal hitter. And I hated him, but I respected him for it. That man absolutely should have been in the Hall of Fame, and I'm glad he is.
I felt
I
that
saw him
way.
destroy the Yankees
Oh, really?
in the playoffs.
Yeah.
95.
Yeah. Yeah. He was.
Destroyed them.
I mean, Edgar Martinez was the best DH of all time before Poppy
Yeah.
came along, I think.
I still think he is. We could debate that too if you want.
Boo! Boo!
And I'll tell you what, I like Poppy better than I like Edgar. And I still think Edgar was better than Poppy. Poppy had some great flash in his hits. Edgar was never going to have the pop. But I'll tell you what, he was just as clutch. And he was more annoying than Poppy.
Only the Mariners weren't perennial underachievers.
I'm happy they were.
To my knowledge, I think they're the only team in Major League Baseball, maybe two. I'm trying to think of another. They're the only team not to have played in the World Series.
Yeah. It's them and wait. Colorado made it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
San Diego made it.
Yep.
Yep.
What else is it? You're right. There's one other. Nationals made it now. Texas made it a few times now. They never did for a while.
The Seattle Mariners. I just Googled it real quick. The Seattle Mariners are the only MLB team that has never appeared in the World Series.
So that they are it then.
Yep.
They are it. Some other teams
So
that
it
have
must have been the
played in the
Nats.
World Series but have never won it are like the Brewers, Padres, Rockies, Rays.
Right. So it must have been the Nats who were the last ones not to make it.
Yep.
Right.
And considering the Expos too with them.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Well, I'll tell you what, they had a murderer's row, especially that year, between Jay Buhner, A-Rod, Griffey, Martinez. I'm pretty sure they had Cameron too back then, right? Was Cameron?
Yeah.
Segui?
Did you say Tino Martinez?
No, Edgar.
Because they had Tino on the 95 team and then he went to
Did
the
have Tino.
96.
Yeah. I mean, they were filthy. Did they have Johnson yet then? They
Randy
did, right?
Johnson?
Yeah.
He pitched he like if you include the playoffs, he probably pitched 300 innings that year.
Oh,
He was filthy. And they just got him. And I think the Expos were like, here, take this dude. He's wild, he's trash.
Yeah.
Have him.
the big unit, or as my dad and I used to call him, the big ugly unit.
I took Jake to Cooperstown last year, and there's an art museum in Cooperstown that we went to just randomly. I thought it was going to be all art, but they had his photography up. He's a professional photographer now.
Interesting.
I heard that.
Huh.
I did hear that.
He goes like all over safaris and concerts and all this other stuff, and he does photography.
I did hear that.
Good.
Here we
Cool.
go. Rollo again. Shitting on the appearance of a Yankee. If they're not handsome, Rollo has no use for the Yankees.
Listen, at least the big ugly unit was embracing his ugliness when he was on other teams, as opposed to the Yankees where they have to make him. Oh, you gotta make sure you gotta cut that beard and just have that tiniest of mustaches. You better cut that long hair too, ugly unit.
Did I ever tell you two that somebody refused to sell me gas in the Bronx?
Really?
Bad mass
What?
plate. Like I think I had a Red Sox bumper sticker on there. Yeah, they refused to sell me gas.
Good, you deserved it. Listen,
And,
do you
I
think that's
laughed at
happened? Yeah, do you think that happened in Boston ever?
yeah, of course.
Probably.
But I was
That's just
surprised.
fun.
I'm like, why? Like this is before we beat them in 2004. I'm like you guys beat us. Like, why do you have a Napoleon cup? We can't beat you.
Well, Pedro did throw Zimmer to the ground, so maybe
Yeah, I'll
he
tell
was
you
a
what.
little salty about that.
It's because the rivalries meant something then.
Yeah.
Now
Yep.
they wouldn't.
Mhm.
You know what? I bet you there's Yankees and Red Sox fans now who would wear one of those hats just to match their clothes.
Mm, mm.
On that, gentlemen, I think we get to end this one.
Yep.
It's been a fun conversation.
Absolutely.
This is something I've wanted to talk about for a while because I'm very passionate about. And I think my brother's starting to listen to these too, by the way.
Oh, hey,
And
good.
and he disagrees with me on this.
Uh,
So I'm interested. He lives next door to me, so whenever I'm cooking out, he comes to the fence. So I'm sure he'll be shitting on this one for me. And
nice.
but I appreciate it, and I'm sure as everything, it seems like everything kind of comes full circle when we talk, right? So
Hmm.
we'll do it again. Um, let's hang out, figure out next week's topic. Um, your your greatest of all time, Shohei, is going to be in the World Series next week. So
We'll have a little bit to talk about.
Mhm.
yeah, my man needs some work to do. So, folks, thank you, gentlemen. Any last words?
We covered it.
Listen, you wake up and it looks crooked, wave it fair.